We've got 4 of us on. We'll give it another couple minutes before we get going here. Clerk McMillan, can you please make Councilmember Lingle a panelist? Or Ms. Goodwin, whichever one it falls to tonight. Thank you. We'll give it 1 more minute. We're just waiting for Councilmember Naplin, but we'll get going as fast as we can here.
Dot, do you want to go on mute really quick until we start the meeting?
I think we're going to start in 1 minute because we'll be at 7:03. They were there. So I'm going to go ahead and call the Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 Duvall City Council meeting to order. Clerk, would you please bring up the flag for the flag salute? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Budnicki.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Hogue.
Here.
Councilmember Naplin. No Councilmember Naplin yet. Councilmember Lingle.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and I'm sure that Councilmember Naplin will be back on shortly. Under additions or corrections to the agenda, please add payroll for November 16th to 30th in the amount of $465,536.25 and claims in the amount of $280,969.12. And please move Agenda Bill 21-125A, Duvall Library Board Position Reappointment of Ms. Rude. Agenda Bill 21-127A, Library Board Position Number 2, Reappointment of Ms. Maimoni. Agenda Bill 21-128A, Planning Commission Position 7, Reappointment, Ms. Sawyer. Agenda Bill 21-129A, Planning Commission Position 5, Reappointment, Mr. Supple. And Agenda Bill 21-133A, Temporary Use Fee Waiver Resolution to the consent agenda. Are there any other items to add to the consent agenda or any other additions or corrections to the agenda? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So moved, McHenry.
Second, Michelle Hogue.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember McHenry, a second by Councilmember Hogue to approve this evening's agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion to suspend the rules in order to approve multiple items on our consent agenda?
So moved, Michelle Hogue.
Second, McHenry.
We have a motion by Councilmember Hogue and a second by Councilmember McHenry to suspend the rules in order to vote on items on the consent agenda that are on first touch. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
So moved, McHenry.
Second, Councilmember Hoag.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember McHenry, a second by Councilmember Hoag to approve this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. Motion passes. And with that, we'll move on to comments from the audience. We did have one email from Mr. Webster, and Ms. Goodwin or Ms. McMillan, would you please read that into the record? And for the public's benefit as well, we did discuss the issue during committee of the whole.
Yeah, I've got it. Hi, everyone. It's Sarah, the clerk.
And we can't hear you. Now
And
we
you
can
can't
hear you.
hear me. Oh, okay, cool.
Now.
Apologize for technical difficulties. I will read this public comment. It is from John C. Webster. Hello, council. No, wait, sorry. Let me start again. Greetings, City Clerk and Duvall City Council. I am John Webster, citizen of Duvall. I have lived at 15930 Broadway Avenue Northeast for 40 years. I write to ask the council to give me an exemption to the waste management service. I terminated the service in 2018 on my own just by a phone call. I am retired and on a fixed income. I have made attempts to lower or omit monthly costs to my expenses. I store garbage in sealed cans and deliver them to Houghton Transfer Station about every 5 months at a cost of approximately $30. I store my recycle in sealed cans and deliver them with cardboard to Houghton about every 2 months for free. I collect my yard waste and deliver it a few times a year to Flower World's compost for free. My estimation of the fee with waste management is $40 per month. I do not produce enough waste to satisfy a weekly truck stop or justify the cost. Sincerely, John C. Webster.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any members of the public that are on the line that would like to provide public comments this evening? If so, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you promoted to panelist so that you may speak. All right, I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and move on to schedule items. First up is the mayor's report. And as council and the public can see, we have a new face with us this evening. We are thrilled that Ms. Sarah McMillan is in her second week with the city of Duvall, actually completing her first week today, actually. She comes to us from the city of Sequim and has extensive background as a clerk. We are absolutely thrilled to have her as a member of our team. And she's really hit the ground running, even in the last 7 days, which really goes to show her background and experience in the position. And we are very thankful to have her. So I hope you will all join me in welcoming Ms. McMillan to the city of Duvall.
Welcome, sir.
And so we'll go ahead and move on
much.
to.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
We're glad you're here. Moving on to the mayor's report, I wanted to give an update. It's been definitely a busy couple of weeks. Met last week with Savannah Steele from Congresswoman Dolbeni's office, primarily talked a bit about flooding in our area, what's going on. She's relatively new to her role in the office, so we're working on coordinating some communication items between offices. Last week, we had the Sound Cities Association annual meeting, so thank you to the council members that were able to attend there as well. Last week, we also had the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board, where we were fortunate to have a couple of members of Congress, Congressman Larson and Congresswoman Strickland, join us to provide an update on the infrastructure bill. Yesterday morning, we had the first of what we expect to be many King County Council District 3 mayors meetings. There have been a group of mayors that it's been growing as far as our regular meetings during COVID. And we've decided that we want to have a different approach when we look to the King County Council. And so we had our first meeting with Councilmember-elect Sarah Perry yesterday. It was quite positive, lots of great ideas flowing in the room and a lot of energy. So we're really excited about the possibility of the future there. We also had, for those council members that could not attend, the Seattle King County Public Health COVID update today. As most are aware, we have a new variant on our shores, Omicron. Early indications are that it is much more transmissible than Delta, as well as the really interesting piece of information is I think it may have taken part of the common cold virus and adapted, which makes it both more mild and more transmissible. So we're going to see, taking that wait and see approach of how this all goes and what happens over the next few weeks. But it's pretty clear that we are yet again in another wave of COVID infections, not just in our area, but statewide and nationwide. City of Duvall is currently in a high transmission status, which means we're having 1 to 2 cases, new cases every single day. So it's just a reminder how important it is for folks to get vaccinated. If you're fully vaccinated, to go and get your booster shots. And the scary thing about this current variant is that at early stages, it does look like it's impacting the kids under age 5 more seriously than it's impacted kids in the past. So in South Africa, as of the first week, they had 10% of their overall COVID hospitalizations were in kids under the age of 5. Not great news, but also not bad news. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that and see where it goes. Again, as we discussed a little bit in committee of the whole, start to look at when and how we reopen our buildings more broadly. This puts a slight damper on that, so at least we know what's going on. I also had a meeting with the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Director, Josh Brown, today. He tries to make it out to all of the executive board members' cities once a year. So this was our opportunity, first time actually since COVID, we've been able to meet in person. Had some great conversations about CSRC moving forward, some of the transportation challenges we're having, and what our city's needs are. It was very nice that CSRC continues to use the city of Duvall as our Main Street projects in particular as an example of how to get projects done right. Mr. Brown just reiterated how well our staff does at starting and phasing projects, cobbling the money together and pushing them forward with the will of council, in particular Main Street. So it was really nice to hear him that he continues to use Duvall as the example of how to get projects funded. On Thursday, the AWC Employee Benefit Trust Board meets, as well as on Friday, the Association of Washington Cities Board meets. And then just wanted to bring up briefly, for folks that haven't seen the redistricting maps for the state of Washington, we're going to have a really huge shift out here in the Snoqualmie Valley that is literally going to split our city limits between Western and Eastern Washington representation. So the city of Duvall proper will be staying within the 45th legislative district. The city of Carnation will be moving to the 12th legislative district, and everything outside of our city borders, east of the city of Duvall and surrounding our city, will be moving to the 12th legislative district, which is basically Chelan County, and picks up some portions of Snoqualmie, et cetera. This is going to create an issue where many of the people that consider Duvall their home don't have representation on this side of the state. So their representatives will now be living in Wenatchee, Leavenworth, and other cities in Chelan, and literally have 3-hour drives just to visit constituents. I don't expect the borders to change much, but while challenging, this provides a really great opportunity to build relationships with those Eastern Washington legislators. Because we know that the people outside of our limits come to us for many issues, and it's critical that these legislators get to understand what our residents' issues are, because they are the same as those that are directly outside our border. So in that light, I've reached out to all three of the legislators in the 12th district, and in the process of scheduling meetings with them over the next couple of weeks to start to get to know them and start to provide information about this area of their district, and help them get acclimated to what it's like in this area. Even though we don't have folks within our city limits, again, there needs to be a connection and relationships built. So I'm really actually excited about that, because I think statewide it provides a really good opportunity in the long run to help take down that cascade curtain divide in the legislature when those Eastern Washington legislators also are representing folks in Western Washington. So with that, I think that's all I have for my report tonight. Are there any questions? Councilmember Lingle?
Yeah, this is something I brought up a few times. You and I have had a couple direct one-on-one conversations about it. Now that we know we have yet another, COVID variant, and likely we'll have more, I wanted to find out about any updates on additional measures in our buildings, particularly those with employees working all the time, to filter better for viruses. There's the HEPA systems out there, and there's also some other ones too. We have the eligibility, I think, with the new ARPA monies. And in any case, I just feel like it's the right thing to do. We want to do everything we can to protect our employees. And what happened with the police station was the HVAC system in its current condition, they decided didn't need to be replaced. And so that money was reprogrammed for things like, additional improvements to the building and some equipment. But we know that we had at least one employee there that was affected by filtration problems last round. There's been, of course, people with COVID in significant positions with the city. So is that something we can additionally explore now, particularly, the visitor center, obviously, City Hall, police station? I would imagine that with the public works renovation, that kind of consideration will be there. So can that be looked at now? Now that we know COVID will be with us?
It is on the list. Mr. Lenishevsky is the best to answer where we're at on that issue.
Good evening, Mayor Council. Steve Lenishevsky, Public Works. At this time, we are kind of slow voting all of our activities. We do not have any direct requests out to any consultants or contractors for HVAC, HEPA, facilitation in our buildings. We do have individual HEPA filters in each room and larger ones in conference rooms for the time being. We still are closed to the public, but we will certainly take it under advisement that we want to do that. No problemo. And I would imagine if we get into contract, which we hope to do soon, likely with ARC for reconstruction of this building, we'll look into that.
Excellent. It's just important that it be on the dance card, so to speak, in the future, and it sounds like it is. So thank you very much.
Yes, and Councilmember Lingle, just to also clarify at this point, other than masking and the normal measures that public health has been recommending, they're not recommending any changes yet. So hopefully it'll stay that way, but yet we don't know. So again, hopefully we'll get through this at some point. So thank you. Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the King County health person that we met with earlier today did mention that King County was working on potential suggestions or specifications for filtering, specifically with the thought in mind that COVID may be with us a very long time. So that is in the works. Obviously, we haven't seen any of that yet, but I think it would help municipalities like ourselves to make decisions on what changes were actually needed if we had something like that. So let's hope we get it sooner as opposed to later.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. All right, moving on to King County Fire District 45 with our fire chief, Mr. Erskine.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Hope everyone is well. I want to start my chief's report just by thanking you for including us in the Light Up Duvall event that occurred over the weekend. Being from the outside and this being my first experience with an event such as this, I couldn't be more prouder to be affiliated with the city. And I just thought that the participation from our residents was just, it was overwhelming, frankly. So thank you for inviting me and allowing the department to be there. And thank you to all the residents who stood out in the cold and welcomed us as we came through the communities. So on to business. Since the last report, the district has seen a steady increase in call volume over the year. We're up to 1,110 calls. Last year, we were at about 990. So we've seen about a 10% increase from last year. Some of that may be attributed to COVID. I don't have the firm numbers on that. But what really stood out to me was the opening of our new Cherry Valley station, which has accounted for 40% of our run volume. And while that seems to be a big number, I think the biggest benefit is that the firefighters in the headquarters station are more readily available to respond within the district now because they're not traveling to the unincorporated area. And so they're just able to get to the residents within the city quicker and continue to deliver that quality service. So I think that we're all recognizing the benefit of that second station on Cherry Valley. We're continuing to work with the city. So I know we've had some contact about impact fees. We're just waiting to get some information passed back and forth between our agencies. We've also started dialogue with the building official on East Side Fire and Rescue to develop a firm schedule for our inspections in 2022 within our permanent buildings. And we're looking forward to starting to shadow in January so that we can get some boots into the buildings and make sure that any hazards we may find are adjusted. And lastly, we're working with the Riverview School District just on some issues that they have, some items that they're looking at. So all of our efforts to work with the agencies within not only the district, but specifically the city are going well. And I appreciate and look forward to continuing those relationships. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much, Chief Erskine, for the update.
Yeah,
And thanks. Oh,
I think you probably didn't appreciate it.
Go ahead, council member.
Thank you. Chief, you had mentioned impact fees. Is that similar to the impact fees we have where it would recognize the cost to support new residential units or commercial buildings? So the cost to provide service?
That's correct. Yes. And I believe we're just exploring it at these stages. That's why we're waiting for some more information.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Certainly.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for also bringing up Light Up Duvall. I always get down straight to the business. I always forget the fun stuff in my report. And so thank you to all the members of council that were able to come out to the tree lighting. And to all the volunteers and especially Sherry James and our public works crew and our police department for all of the work organizing and getting that going. For those that didn't see our public works trucks, they had some extra lights and really did a bang up job making them really festive. And so next year we look forward to the return of the in-person event. But I think there's also some components of what we've done the last couple of years. I hope that we are able to continue into the future. So thank you. Moving on to council committee reports. First up is finance and administration.
So I suspect that's me because I chaired the meeting, even though I'm not officially the chair. So I'm assuming I need to give the report. Am I seeing head nod from the others?
That sounds good.
So the first item on our agenda is we looked at the selection of the financial management consultant and lessons learned, and Mr. Opal gave us some ideas for approaches for that selection. Potentially veering away from a super formal request for proposal RFP and having a slightly less formal approach for that selection process. So we had a discussion about that. Secondly, we discussed the reserve officer changes to code to allow for the payment to the reserve officer. I had a question at the last council meeting. It was answered for me. And so it ended up on the consent agenda. The third item was the ARPA consultant. There was a pretty robust conversation about different approaches. We heard some information about what other cities were doing. And Mr. Opal brought forward kind of 3 different ideas, one being just a direct consultant, similar to what we've seen other cities do. Like the city of Newcastle, they are using management partners to help them in that situation. It's more of a, hiring a consultant to assist in identifying community needs, city needs, and kind of setting up the program of how the spending potentially could occur. Another idea that Mr. Opal brought forward was hire someone in-house for the 2 or 3 years that had been previously proposed. And the third would be sort of a hybrid version where a position would be hired in-house, but perhaps it would have some overlap with a communications position, a policy analyst, economic development, maybe a management analyst. It was kind of a jack of all trades position. And so I'm hoping we'll hear more. I think Mr. Opal was going to talk about that possibly in his update. The fourth item was just the fee resolution. We already, I think, discussed some of that in the COW, the special events code update. We already discussed that in the COW. And then finally, we talked about the approach to completing the procurement policy and just how best to efficiently move that forward. And Mr. Opal had some good ideas that we tossed around, and we'll see if we can make better progress in the future. It's been a slow go. Everyone's trying hard, but it's a giant policy. So anyway, that's my update. I think our next meeting is, I'm guessing it won't be until January, but I don't have the schedule in front of me. I see a head shaking. Maybe there's a meeting that I don't remember. Go ahead, Councilmember Langle.
Oh, no, I checked on this and we do have another meeting, and I believe our finance director has sent out the invitation. So double check your email. I have it down for the 16th at 1:30.
Thank you for helping me out. So does anyone have any questions? I see.
Councilmember McHenry.
Just a quick one. Well, first, is that December 16th or January?
It's December.
Okay, I don't think I saw that. I think one thing I just wanted to bring up really quickly that's been on my mind with this is, unless there are really urgent other matters for the Finance and Administration Committee to take on, I really believe that they should be allowed to focus fully on the procurement policy. So what that could mean is if there are other items that would normally end up on their agenda, perhaps they can be at the COW instead, just to allow space. The alternative hybrid to that would be that they have extra meetings if they're willing to do that, and that they have meetings dedicated only to procurement. Because just in my observation, it was a really ambitious agenda and a lot to get through. And I just know from being on the procedures committee, I mean, that's our whole meeting is just going through that policy. So I'm in awe that they've accomplished as much as they have, and also looking at other items on an agenda. So I personally would just like to see finance and administration be able to just solely focus on the procurement policy, because I think they're close. It's a lot of other stuff to balance. So just wanted to throw that out. Don't need a decision or anything. Just wanted to put that out there now.
Thank you. All right, moving on to land use with Chair Hoag.
Thank you, Mayor. I misspoke at the last meeting and said we had a meeting last Wednesday, but that was the day before Thanksgiving. So we did not have a meeting that day. Our meeting is tomorrow morning at 8:30 with land use. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to public safety with Chair Budnicki.
Well, this is my last report. So we did meet on November 30th at 11:30. And in attendance was myself, Councilmember McHenry, Councilmember Schaefer, City Administrator Opal, and Chief DeBach and Lieutenant Saber. The first item that we discussed was police officer recruitment update. And Chief DeBach provided an update on the training status of the 2 new officers and an update on the recent recruiting and hiring efforts for open position. As you know, we're going through a lot of transition there. Chief DeBach explained that 1 candidate has been given a conditional offer of employment and 2 candidates are currently in the background process. And then Elliot Head has been hired and his academy will start March 8th in 2022. Reserve Officer MOU with Officers Association. Council approved those changes to the ordinance related to the reserve officers. An MOU between the city and the FOP is currently being negotiated. Then we have the Public Defender Services, which was covered earlier in the CAL, and a draft contract has been reviewed and recommended by the city attorney and is ready for discussion at tonight's meeting. Jet ski procurement, I believe City Administrator Opal went over that. And as mentioned in the CAL, we will want to move forward on those jet skis, as we all know that the supply chain delivery system is limited in so many areas. And so we went over that in the CAL about how the 2 are being held for us. So that will be discussed, I'm sure, coming up. SRO update, Lieutenant Saburn provided an update on the SRO at the Cedar Crest High School, and Sergeant Clark is a new SRO through the end of the school year. And police supervision update, there's a lot of change with our officers currently being hired, others leaving to other career moves or relocating. And there's just a lot happening. And according to Chief DeBach, the biggest challenge is, of course, the amount of openings everywhere right now, as you know, in public safety all over our state for sure, and probably across the nation. And finally, the Public Safety Committee has decided to cancel the regular meeting because it's at the end of the year near Christmas. And so instead, that would be 12/28. So they're going to meet next on January 25th, 2022. And that's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you, Chair Budnicki, and thank you for your service as Chair of the Public Safety Committee this year. Moving on to Public Works with Chair McHenry.
No report.
Thank you. Are there any reports for either of the ad hoc committees, Council Procedures or Human Services Grant Policy?
Just briefly, the next procedures meeting is the December 13th at 12:30.
All right, thank you. And did any council members have any general topics that you didn't cover during your committee reports that you would like to report on this evening? Councilmember McHenry?
It's not a report. I just wanted to echo all the comments about Light Up Duvall. It is so, I think everyone really misses having the in-person, obviously, but I feel like we've taken what would be a really sad thing to miss out on that event we usually have and turned it into something so awesome that I've heard many people say, well, when it goes back to normal, are we still going to have the parade through town because they love it so much? So I don't know. I mean, I know that's a big production, but I just wanted to thank everyone, all the city staff and all the volunteers that make that happen. It is always amazing and it always just brightens everyone's spirits. So just a huge thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to administration update with our city administrator, Mr. Kevin Oppel, and deputy city administrator, Ms. Thomas.
So we have just a note that we have, it should be, it was changed in our file, but the special council meeting is going to be on 12/14, beginning at 5:30 with no cow. And that's going to mainly focus on anything that's left over from this meeting, but also the 2 public hearings in the attached direction from those. The staff met with Duvall Foundation of the Arts last week. They're auctioning off their structure, the barn, and will be, the big white structure that they have over their barn, be relocating some of the original barn structure to their parcel. They've also requested some assistance with technical assistance and permitting costs. They're looking at the demo permit being around, $200 or less. So I don't think that's a huge burden for us to support. They have requested to facilitate it, but we'd have to get approval for that because it's in code that we have to, so it's an ordinance. So then we have requested a facilitated meeting with city council. The overarching theme was that they feel that the relationship between the city and DFA is not a consensual one. We're not really working together for the same ends. This is from their point of view, and so they'd like to have a meeting where they sort of restart that with a facilitator and talk about how to move forward, especially with the barn project being at a standstill now. So that was their request from us to do that. And then they wanted to mention that the Lantern Festival is on February 5th and March of the Vegetables is on March 19th. And then the final thing is just a reminder that the council vacancy, we published it for the 21st of December. We're accepting applications. I think at this point we have 0 applications for former council member Remington's seat. We could extend it another week and republish, but one of the things is with no applications is we're gonna have to beat the bushes a little bit because we have nobody in the hopper. And so I guess that's part of the question is how do we get good quality candidates? Because if we're not able to fill it within 90 days of the vacancy, then the King County executive will appoint one for us, which I don't think is a great solution. The deadline to appoint that position is end of January. So we've got to the end of January, but it behooves us to try to get some good applicants in so that you can review them. And that's my report, unless there's questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Lingle and then Councilmember Schaefer.
Well, 2 comments. First of all, I really liked what you did with the consent agenda thing at the previous meeting at the cow. So I wanted to make sure I said that. But on the extension issue, this is something I've actually been a little concerned about. We had the same issue when Rick Schaefer applied. Of course, he's now going to continue to be with us, and because it was all happening at the end of the year. So I encourage us to strongly consider at least extending it a week, and if we need to think about something more, council putting in some extra effort to move any applications we might get. I mean, it's just a tough time of year to recruit more public participation. And so that's my pitch. At least the week. If administration feels like we need to scrunch more, council needs to do some extra lifting to help it out.
And I worry because we do need to have there's some process in January before we appoint. You want to be able to do your due diligence. So that's one of the reasons why we started with it December 21st, to give us some time to prepare those for review. But right now we have 0 to do that with.
Councilmember Schaefer and then Naflin.
All right, let's see. So first of all, to reiterate what Councilmember Lingle just said, yeah, I would strongly support extending the deadline. Kevin, you said the deadline's currently December 21st to apply. Is that correct?
That's what we had originally. We thought that was going to give us plenty of time then to review and get packages prepared so that the council can review them and do interviews or whatever whatever you're hoping to do with it. But we've got nothing. So we're saying at least to the 28th. I would be concerned about going too far into January because, like I said, you still have to do, your due diligence. And so we're recommending maybe the 28th. If you want to go into January, I don't know how much you're gaining from it, from the 28th of December to the, whatever, early January. I don't know if a lot of people are going to apply on 1st of January. It's just a question.
When is our deadline for making the appointment? It's the 31st, January 31st. Is that right?
90 days from when Councilmember Remington resigned, and I don't have the exact date in front of me. I know it's near the end of January.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good to know. And I don't recall the exact date either. By the way, I have beat a few bushes, but apparently no birds have flown out yet. But I encourage the council in general to perhaps beat some bushes of folks that might be interested and qualified, of course, to assist us on the council. Other question I had for you is give me a sec. Oh, you mentioned that the barn and the tent were at a standstill, but I thought your item said those were being auctioned off.
No, I'm saying that I meant is the project to create the barn into a performing arts center. That's pretty much at a standstill.
Okay.
So
yes,
they're talking about they're way ahead. The after the structure has been auctioned off and after the barn has been disassembled and some of it's going to be given to local farmers and so forth. What do they do next? I mean, there's to be blunt, there were some accusations that the city is not doing their job and they've been working counter to the DFA. And so this is a way we said, look, let's not throw stones at each other. If you want to do collaboration, we need to start from scratch and really have a facilitator and talk
Sure.
about this,
Sure.
about what our goals are and what, how do we work together?
I do like that idea. Did the DFA receive an extension from the landowner then? Because the original deadline, I think, was what, end of November?
I think they did. I think, the best is probably Laura. She has a better idea of the timeline because I think they've got 60 days from the time of the end of the auction to be clear. Is that correct, Laura?
Thank you. For the record, City of Duvall, Community Development, Laura Thomas. The new landowner of C1 gave them through the middle of next year to move their structure. DFA decided to move on it a little bit earlier, just as part of their level of comfort. The auction, I believe, ends tomorrow or is tomorrow. And then whoever purchases it has 60 days to remove that tent. And in the meantime, DFA is trying to figure out how and what to save and where to put it and how to put it. So we're trying to work through that process that we've been answering a couple of permitting questions. One thing, Kevin, I was thinking if council is amenable to waiving the fee, we would probably need to bring a resolution back to council to do that for probably the next council meeting, because they're going to have to probably start securing their permits as early as next week.
Yeah. Okay, good. No, that's great. I didn't realize that the sale of the property had already taken place. So that's good. Good to know. Good to know the new owner is giving them some leniency.
And to give you a question that you asked before, it looks like the 3rd of November is when Mike Remington resigned, which, if I'm doing my little simpleton math, it's either the 31st or the 1st of February is when we must have. So I'm going with the 31st of January. We must have a replacement to King County, or they take over the process.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Thank you.
And Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, I just have I think just one follow-up question for Director Thomas. And one of the things that DFA needed to do, because they had a pretty hefty property tax bill, was apply to the county to get an exemption on their parcel. Do you know if they did that?
Councilmember Lingle, I am unaware if they completed that task.
Okay.
Councilmember Naplin and then Mayor Pro Tem McHenry.
Yeah, I have a new question. I don't know if this is something that you're aware of the new owner. Do we know the intentions for the property or any discussions? If that's something you could share, Director.
Yes, Councilmember Naplin. We've had a pre-application with the new owner. A dentist in the region purchased that property and they're looking at doing a medical building and then a second building. So 2 buildings for the site. They're not sure what that second building is going to be yet. So stay tuned on that. We're actually actively working with them now. I would expect an application to come in early next year for that property.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My original question was just that I was curious what kind of outreach we've had for the council position. I know sometimes I see something once and then, might forget about it until the next time I see it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to do something about that. So I don't know how many times we've put something out there, if it made it into the, the utility bill or how we can get the message out, because at Christmas time, everyone's busy and going a million miles. So it might take a few more.
I can answer that question. We have put it in our utility bill. We've put it on our website. We published it to our paper of record, and we have done a Facebook, including a paid boost for that. So
that's a lot and still nothing. So we need to get to work on that. Thank you. That's a lot of work to do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was looking at the calendar and, I think we still have 2 weeks until the 21st, but maybe, I'm good with extending it 1 week. And I think you're right. If we try to extend it 2 weeks, it's just getting really tight with the timeline. And especially if we have more than 3 applicants, we have to narrow them down and we just don't have a lot of time to do that. So, I would be good with going ahead and extending it that week. And then, yeah, I'm happy to help shake some bushes, as Councilmember Schaefer put it, and or beat some bushes, whatever the saying is. And if there's anything else you guys can think of that we can do to help encourage people to apply, I'm game for that.
Thank you. So it looks like there's consensus to extend for a week. So we'll go ahead and do that. And of course, we'll continue to work on our end to publicize and hopefully get some applicants. All right, moving on, we have this evening, we have swearing in of Councilmember Schaefer. So as he was appointed to a vacant seat, he has what we call a short and full term, which means he gets to get sworn in twice in the next 2 months. And tonight is one of those. So I hope you will all join me in Mr. Councilmember Schaefer, if you go ahead and raise your right hand and repeat after me. And we'll get you officially sworn in for the next month and a half, or actually 3 weeks. I, Rick Schaefer.
Yes, to unmute.
Or unmute, Councilmember.
That would help. Okay, thank you. I, Rick Schaefer.
Having been duly elected to the office of City of Duvall, Council Position Number 2.
I've been duly elected to the office of Council Position Number 2 in the City of Duvall.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully and impartially.
That I will faithfully and impartially.
Discharge the duties of this office.
Discharge the duties of this office.
As prescribed by law and to the best of my ability.
As prescribed by law and to the best of my abilities.
And that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington.
And I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington.
And of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
Congratulations on your next 3 weeks, and look forward to swearing you in one more time in January. So we're
Great.
glad to have
Thank
you here.
Glad to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Moving on, we do not have any presentations, but we do have 2 public hearings. The first one is the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendments Public Hearing number 2. And I will go ahead and open that hearing and hand it over to Director Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of our community. Troy Davis, our Senior Planner, will be presenting the public hearing information. Thank you.
Did we want to open the hearing, or was the hearing opened officially?
It has been officially opened.
Okay, all right, thank you. Great. Let me share my screen here. So tonight we're holding a second public hearing on the proposed amendments to the 2021 Comprehensive Plan. And we just want to formally enter into the record exhibits 1 through 61 as enumerated in the staff report that's dated December 7th, 2021 into the record. And the essential purpose of this second public hearing is to add those additional exhibits that were not included, unfortunately, in the first hearing, namely the future land use map and the updated proposed zoning map. So those exhibits have been added into the record as we speak. So the other point I wanted to bring up is we did get recommendations from the Planning Commission. We did get a motion to approve the transportation element amendment that was proposed by the Snoqualmie Valley Mobility Coalition to approve that one. We did get a recommendation to approve the rezoning of CPA 21-002, which is the west parcel. Sorry, I don't have the parcel number off the top of my head, but they're on 143rd, to approve that parcel to be rezoned from R20 to R12. And then we did get a recommendation to approve the adjacent parcel to the east from R20 to R12 as well. Following our public hearing with the Planning Commission back in November, we did end up with a tie vote on that particular parcel. It's proposed rezone. It was a 2-2 tie vote. And based on advice from our city attorney, we had the Planning Commission do a double take on that at their next Planning Commission meeting that they held on December 1st. So at their December 1st meeting, they made another motion to approve the rezone of that east parcel from R20 to R12 with a 5-2 vote. And then the other motions or other comp plan amendments that were on the docket for 2021 were denied. So I just wanted to include Planning Commission's recommendations to City Council. Other than that, everything that was presented at the first public hearing remains the same. So I won't go through those details, but I will kind of show you the exhibits that were in the packet. So this was the updated proposed future land use map and what it will look like. Oops, sorry, and particularly your focus over here is where the change is. So these 2 parcels here, the designation changing from R20 to R12. And then on the proposed updated zoning map, again, these 2 parcels showing a zoning classification of R12 instead of R20. And that concludes staff presentation.
Great, thank you. Are there any attendees on the line that would like to provide public comment? I'm not seeing any. So with that, we can go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to our second public hearing for the 2021 Riverview School District 2021 School Impact Fees. And the public hearing is now open. Director Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor, council members of our community. This evening, we are holding a public hearing for the Riverview School District impact fees that would become effective January 1st of 2022. This is a task that we take on every year at this time. We have an interlocal agreement with the Riverview School District where we collect their school impact fee on their behalf, and then we remit those to the school district. So just a little bit of history. The district adopted their 2021 capital facilities plan, which is their 6-year CIP on 6/22/2021, and that included their recommended school impact fee. The district did present their CFP to council in early December. Probably one kind of note in that particular plan is the district does anticipate a 5% growth rate in student enrollment. This is up from what they typically see. And so that will be a pretty big change for the district moving forward, but we'll continue to watch it and monitor it over the next several years. And that can always be adjusted. It typically does get adjusted on a yearly basis. So let's get down to the meat of it because we adopt their school impact fees. So the proposal for the 2022 single family rate is $13,991. This includes our single family attached units like townhomes. I know that's a question that often comes up, so we wanted to address it within the public hearing. The multifamily rate is set to be $8,951. These are like condominiums, triplexes, and apartments. The capital highlights include a new K-5 facility, the Cedar Crest High School addition, the Tolt Middle School modernization, the technology and security upgrades, and major facility maintenance. The 6-year CIP does include approximately $80 million investment within our community. This would be through bonds, local match, state match, and the school impact fees. Both fees include a 25% discount rate. This was an item that our council took on probably almost a handful, well, not quite a handful of years ago, but worked with the school district to do the 25% discount rate. The typical discount rate in our region is usually a 50% discount, and our community wanted to see the development community pay a little bit more to the school district to better reflect money available for the school district to spend on their CIP. The school impact fees are used for capital projects. The district is in the planning process to determine the amount of the dedicated impact fees for each project. The school impact fee cannot be used for existing deficiencies. That's similar for any sort of impact fee. They can't be used for deficiencies, only for a proportionate share. This item is up for discussion under new business this evening. Council can take formal action on this item this evening, or it can put it potentially on consent at the next meeting if it prefers that as well. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes our presentation for the public hearing.
Thank you, Director Thomas. And once again, if there's anyone attending this meeting online this evening that would like to provide public comment, now would be the time. Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing and move on to our first item of new business, Agenda Bill 21-118A, Conflict Public Defender Services Contract for Discussion and/or decision. Chief Duvall.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, community members and present. Chief Duvall, please. I'm here to present Agenda Bill 21-118A, which is Public Defender Service Contract. Traditionally had a contract for these types of services. Additional defenders for those suspects during the trial period. This contract would provide a flat fee for contract to supplement our current indigent legal and prevent a rate from being set by whoever the court appoints. Valley Defenders was recommended by our city prosecutor and discussed with our indigent legal firm. A draft agreement has been reviewed by our city attorney and recommended for the approval. The biennium budget does include enough funds under our indigent legal to cover this service. And we're respectfully requesting approval with a quick one touch this evening in hopes that it will be in place by January 1st when we are changing our court services.
Thank you, Chief DeBach. Does council have any questions for the chief this evening? Seeing none, does council want to move this forward this evening? Great. If so, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved, Schaefer.
Second, McHenry.
All right, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules this evening in order to vote on Agenda Bill 21-118A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, happy to entertain a motion on the underlying agenda bill.
This is Schaefer. I move that we approve Agenda Bill 21-118A, authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Valley Defenders, PLC, for conflict public defender services.
Second, Napland.
Right. We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer and a second by Councilmember Napland to approve Agenda Bill 21-118A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-124A, waive runner purchase for discussion and or decision. Chief DeBach.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, city staff, and members of the community who are present. Chief DeBach and Duvall, please. Back in April, we received approval from council to purchase some watercraft for our water safety program. We went through the city's procurement process. We received no bids. Following that process, we did reach out to a local dealer directly regarding a price and availability. They had two Yamaha Wave Runners in stock along with a trailer. They agreed to hold them for us until April 8th, so I can present this to you this evening. The cost has gone up, as City Administrator discussed earlier, due to the lack of inventory and availability. The new cost is approximately $6,705 more than was previously approved back in April on the 20th. And we're respectfully requesting to obtain these units now while they're still available in order to continue our safety program this summer of 2022.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone have any questions for Chief DeBach on this item? Councilmember Lingle? Or, I'm sorry, Councilmember Napland. It's been a long day.
That's
Sorry about that,
okay.
Councilmember.
Yeah, I was just curious if it looked like we would have enough staffing and trained staffing to run our program this summer. I know things have been really tight, just getting, regular patrols.
With our current hiring process, we do have 3 people in the background right now. One already been given up. Stating by time we'll be back up to levels. Lieutenant Sabrin is working on a training class for these officers who are going to be involved in the water safety program to get them trained up before the summer gets here. He's still waiting for word back on that. So I anticipate our levels to be up as long as everything goes well. We've had some rough waters here, no pun intended, for the last few months, but hopefully everything stays stable.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember McHenry?
One of the questions I had asked at our committee was what the approximate life is of these units, just kind of similar to our police cars, how, they're good for about 5 years. And I think the answer was at the time about the same, right? About 5 years. So one of my points and why I support this is even given staffing challenges, I think we'll get there in time, but the reality is the prices and the availability are just going to get worse. So I think it's good to try and get in now and get these secured.
Thank you. And Councilmember, I'm sorry, I keep saying Councilmember, it's Mayor Pro Tem McHenry now. I'm still getting a little used to that. Depending on how wave runners are maintained, they can last over a decade and run perfectly. So it all boils down to maintenance and hours on the engine on really how long they'll actually last. So I think it's very possible that we could end up getting more time than we normally get out of our vehicles out of this one. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, and I don't have any questions. I actually have some comments, most of which I've made before, but I want to kind of reiterate the importance of this to the council. First of all, I think it would be a mistake on our part to go yet another summer without the ability to patrol the river. As we all know, during the summer months, the river gets shallow and you can wade clear across to where the deeper channel, where the boats cruise by. This is a significant risk, especially to our youth who, likely are not as watchful as adults and can put themselves in danger without knowing that. I'm sure that any of us spent any amount of time there have seen careless boaters speed by that may indeed be actually inebriated, but are certainly going too fast no matter what. Finally, the likelihood that this summer will again be, trend towards warmer weather. I suspect the beach will get lots of business. I really do want to have the ability to patrol the waters and give increased safety to our folks that are making use of it down there.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Would somebody like to make a motion to suspend the rules in order to vote on this evening?
So move, Schaefer.
Second, Hoag.
We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Councilmember Hoag to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes, and I'd be happy to entertain a motion on the underlying agenda bill.
This is Schaefer. I move that we vote to approve AB 21-124A Wave Runner purchase authorization.
I second McHenry.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Remington to approve Agenda Bill 21-124A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Thank you, and looking forward to having some water enforcement yet again this summer. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 21-126A, an appointment for Duvall Cultural Commission position number 7 for Ms. Jill Camerano. First off, normally we take the vote first and then allow the new appointee to share a few words. So I'd ask that we go ahead and do that. It's a first touch, but technically you don't really need to suspend the rules on this. So it's up to council how you want to handle this one.
I'd like to move that we approve Agenda Bill AB 21-126A.
Second, Councilmember Napland.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And Ms. Camerano, if you are so inclined, please feel free to turn your video on and unmute yourself and share a few words. I would just like to say, from my perspective, very thankful to have your addition to the Cultural Commission. I've heard lots about you from folks in the community and excited to have your skill set and your volunteer time to our important activities here in the community. So with that, the floor is yours.
Hi, it's nice to meet you all. I know a couple of you. I'm sorry, it's so dark in here. I haven't had the video up, so I haven't been able to see. But I am really excited to be a part of this. I've been living in Duvall for about 15 years, and I have kids, one who's graduated Cedar Crest, 2 more on their way. I'm also an artist, and I have participated in a lot of art events in town through the years. So I'm really excited to be a part of it and hope to, have input and make the events better and just add a little bit of insight, having been a participant. So I look forward to working with you guys and the Duvall Art Commission, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Jill, and congratulations.
Thanks.
All right. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, Agenda Bill 21-121A, appointment of the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum Committee member. So we had a little bit of a discussion about this in Committee of the Whole. And so I'll just go ahead and ask, are there any council members that are interested in serving in this position? Councilmember Schaefer?
Well, I am interested. As many of you know, I am a avid fisherman. I've actually prefer salmon fishing. So this is a subject near and dear to my heart, with my leaning towards environmental concerns as well. I think it would be something that I would be very, very interested in. That being said, I think there might be a few other council members interested in it, and I don't want to, dominate or suggest that I'm, any better than they might be. So please, for the other council members that may be interested, please go ahead.
Councilmember McHenry?
Yeah, I had said I would be interested, but only if others weren't, just hoping to continue in the mayor pro tem role a bit longer. And that's a lot. So, I mean, it would be one less thing. If you're excited about it, I totally support that and look forward to seeing you in that role.
Councilmember Hoag?
I apologize if you hear noise in the background. I've got 4 dogs in the room with me, so I'm sorry for that. But I know that Director Thomas had mentioned that there can be some connection with this committee with the flood control district, which I'm on. Doesn't necessarily mean that I want to be on this committee, but maybe Councilmember Schaefer, if you did do it, you have passion for it, I think that's awesome. Maybe we could connect on occasion to kind of, discuss what's going on in the different committees.
I bet we can. No, I think that would be an excellent way to treat this. That being said, Councilmember Hoag, if you do have an interest to that, specifically in this position, I'd be glad to step down and make way for you. I know you have a good background with the flood control district, much experience in general. So like I say, I wasn't trying to browbeat my way into the position.
I don't know if you want me to comment, but it's not an area that I'm passionate about, to be very honest. So I just think that you would be perfect for it, but yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I do love fish, so yeah, thank you.
Right, Mayor Pro Tem McHenry.
Mayor, do you need a motion on this or just a general consensus to appoint?
We have an agenda bill. We do a formal motion.
Okay, then I move we appoint Councilmember Schaefer to the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum.
Second, Councilmember Napland.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry and a second by Councilmember Napland. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Congratulations, Councilmember Schaefer. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-119A, Ordinance Chapter 6.02, Garbage Collection Update for discussion and or decision. Director Thomas and our City Attorney Daniel Kennedy.
I guess I'll take the lead unless Director Thomas was going to do it.
Sorry, Daniel, you can do this item, but I'm here definitely to support. And I did email out the strike and delete version to council just before the meeting.
Great. Good evening, council. And this is just a follow up to the discussion that we had at COW. This is just code revisions to bring the code into a consistent reading with the contract with waste management that you've already approved. And so that is the only intention behind it. Again, this would be first reading. We'd like to get it approved at the next meeting if possible. Yeah, so there's nothing really life-changing with this. So if anybody has any questions, please let us know.
Great. Councilmember Napoli?
Yeah, I just looked at it and it's all red. So you were right. There was more than one line that had changed. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to just take a peek at it. And if we could have, even if it goes on the consent next time, I just wouldn't mind having a chance taking a peek at what had changed.
Absolutely. And I guess I'll just give a little bit more color to that. Some of the definitions and things like that that were used in the contract were pulled over. So you're going to see probably more red up front in those sections. Because it's a quick turnaround between this meeting and the next meeting, please feel free to shoot me a call or anything like that between now and then to facilitate maybe that going on consent, but I'm available.
Great. Yeah, I don't anticipate having any questions. I just wanted to take a peek at it.
Yep, great.
All right. Any further question or discussion on this item? All right, so we'll go ahead and move that on then. Agenda Bill 21-130A, Contract Amendments Date Extension for discussion and or decision. Director Thomas and Director Laniszewski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Citizens, Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. I did appreciate the conversation in the committee meeting a little earlier. The question being, for the record, was we have proposed pushing these contracts to the end of April. That was a 4-month extension. We thought we might be pushing our luck because we know how important the new management of on-call recruitment is desired to be done. We're hopeful we can get it all done by April. Again, I do appreciate the fact that somebody, I think Councilmember Naplan, thought maybe June would have been a little more standard with our 6-month extensions. Totally correct, but like I said, I'm not sure we thought we had a whole bunch of thumbs up for that. So with that said, this item is here. These are the standard on-call contracts for supportive staff throughout the year, multidisciplinary. As you can tell, this batch was non-funding related, so the contract term amounts are enough, we think, per our burn rates to get us through the end of April. They likely could get us through July or June as well. So with that said, I don't have any other points on that question. I think, or point on the topic, I would imagine that maybe all the consultants would be fine amending the date to the end of June with an initialization on the contract before we sign. So dealer's choice.
Councilmember Lingle?
I am in favor of giving them more time. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first is what I see as somewhat of an obvious one, which is that we do not, in our budget planning, we did not expect Public Works to have their new positions in place until mid-year. So that suggests we're going to need more time right there. And then the other one was when we envisioned starting to do a little more outreach on call, we always envisioned that it was going to be a process that would roll over an 18-month period. So going to 6 months, I agree with Councilmember Naplan, that keeps us in the spirit of our original concept for on call. I guess there's a third point too, which is we are under tremendous staffing pressures now. So I think the more flexibility we can do with the on calls, the better.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. We don't have a motion on the floor, but this is also first touch. It sounds like I'm not hearing objections to the extension to June. So it would take a suspension of the rules, a motion and amendment to move this forward and make that change this evening. Is that what council would like to do? Right. Would someone like to make a motion to suspend the rules? Councilmember Lingle?
I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second, McHenry.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, second by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, would someone like to make a motion on the underlying bill?
I make a motion to amend the expiration date of the contracts to June 30th.
Can't have an amendment until we have a motion on the agenda, bill.
Oh, sorry about that.
I can make a motion. It's all in good spirit. I make a motion to approve the agenda bill, which is AB 21-130A.
Second.
All right. Do we have a second on that?
Second, Councilmember Naplin.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember Naplin to approve Agenda Bill 21-130A. Now would be the appropriate time for an amendment.
I'll make a motion to amend the expiration date of these contracts to June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Great. We have a motion by Councilmember Naplin and a second by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry to amend the extension contract dates to the end of June 2022. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Any discussion on the agenda bill as amended? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the Agenda Bill 21-130A as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And moving on now to Agenda Bill 21-131A, Contract Amendments, Date Extension, and Dollar Adjustment for discussion and/or decision. Director Thomas and Director Laniszewski.
Hello again, Council. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. I do appreciate the latitude on the timing of those contracts. I think we will still try to facilitate our process moving forward and see what we can get knocked out. Gavin is working on setting that up, but we've had a couple other priorities with the shorting of staff and some free grant money we have to facilitate expending. So with that said, this list is much shorter. It is 3. I am moving to it now. I apologize. 3 consultants. We do try to double up too for those who don't maybe know. Community development and public works overlap quite a bit in their work. Everybody does work autonomously, but we also try to work together. And when we do that, we have consultants. In this case, we have taken to utilization of the arborist a little more routinely than in years past. She does great work, helps us on our own projects, helps our maintenance staff facilitate better work in the field. And then, of course, they do a lot of work with community development and project management and review. So the 3 consultant contracts in this case are Transpo, Blue Line, and Bartlett. Transpo is obviously our transportation consultant, but they specialize in GIS work as well and are helping to facilitate the planning department, community development department's upgrade of their permit tracking system. So they are being utilized for that along with transportation review for development activities. Blue Line Consulting facilitates planning's peer review for planning, and then Bartlett Consulting is the arborist, which we share, like I said. So with that said, I'm not sure the burn rate would get us to where we need to be for June, end of June. We would certainly try if the same motions were made. And then I just talked to Laura about putting these on the forefront of our solicitation requirements first. That way we can get through a few before we get through a bunch and just put these at the front of the pecking order. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Laniszewski. Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Lingle?
Yeah, I didn't go back and compare the fee rates to the last time. Did we see any increase in fee rates? Are they steady?
We did allow them to submit a new fee table. Bartlett did not resubmit. She said keep the same. Blue Line and Transpo did. They were not large increases since they had 14 of them. I don't commit them all to memory. They were fairly minimum, not really affecting any of our budget at this point. So if you want me to be exact, I could send you an email afterwards, just no matter how this gets passed or not. But.
No, the only reason I bring this up is because I want to remind council that the cost of hourly services is quite different than the cost for us to have adequate staffing. So I think it's something council always needs to be thinking about when there's staffing requests or staffing decisions being made. I just wanted to remind everybody of that, since that's always been one of my heartfelt things about Public Works.
Thank you, Councilmember. Would council like to take action on this evening? And if so, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
I move we suspend our rules.
Second, Schaefer.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Henry McHenry, a second by Councilmember Schaefer to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, would someone like to make a motion on the bill itself?
I move we approve Agenda Bill 21-131A, authorizing the mayor to sign amendments for the 2019-2020 on-call contracts.
Second, Councilmember Napland.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry and a second by Councilmember Napland to approve Agenda Bill 21-131A. Is there any further discussion or any amendments to propose?
I'll make
Councilmember Lingle.
I make a motion that the extensions go to June, like the other ones. Was that June 30, 2022?
I'll second that, Councilmember Napland.
We have a motion for amendment to extend the contracts to the end of June 2022 by Councilmember Lingle, with a second by Councilmember Napland. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, are folks ready to vote on Agenda Bill 21-131A as amended? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. With that, moving on to Agenda Bill 21-132A, Interagency Department of Commerce Housing Action Plan. For discussion and/or decision, Director Thomas.
So good evening, Mayor and Council, and again, members of our community. At our workshop, we discussed the interagency agreement for our housing action plan. The City of Duvall applied for a Department of Commerce grant in October and was awarded that grant. And we now have a contract to do that work. The work will be broken up into two phases. One will be valley-wide, which is the housing needs assessment. But the contract that we're entering into with Department of Commerce is for the housing action plan portion, and it's for $55,000. It will help assist us in our 2024 comprehensive plan update, and that will be directly related to our housing element update. And we have $55,000 allocated to us to do that work. I'm available to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Thomas? Councilmember Napland?
I just wanted to check. I heard that it was going to the Land Use Committee. Is that correct? And I can hold my questions until then, as long as.
So the contract's not necessarily going to the committee. We're going to be talking about the RFP for the housing needs assessment tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
The contract is a drafted agreement that's based on the scope of work. You can obviously wait till next week to to approve it, but it does need to get approved by the end of the year so we can continue to move forward.
So that scope of work you had said was pretty standard. Is that correct?
Correct. It's based on essentially the statute, the House bill that came with it. So it's very direct, and we based our grant application, which is in the packet, based on that scope of work as well.
I'm ready to move forward. I just did have a few questions about it. So as long as I can ask them at another time.
Yes, of
All
course.
right, excellent. Is the rest of council ready to move forward with this evening? All right, happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules. Councilmember Langle.
Second, Hoag.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Legel, a second by Councilmember Hoag to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And would someone now like to make a motion on the agenda bill itself?
I'll make a motion on agenda bill AB 21-132A.
Second, Hoag.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember Hoag to approve agenda bill 21-132A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to agenda bill 21-134A, special event application processing fee ordinance for discussion and/or decision. Director Mason.
Council, Mayor Dana Mason, Finance Director. As we talked about briefly in the COW, the city's fees are found in resolutions, ordinance, and municipal codes. The staff has been working really hard to put it all in one fee resolution, which will be presented to council at the next meeting. In that resolution, the special event application permitting processing fee, which was established in 1997, is increasing from $25 to $50. In order for us to make that change, municipal code needs to be changed. Municipal code, which has the fee in it, needs to be changed to allow it to be changed by resolution. And we'll slowly be doing this to all of the fees that have been established by municipal code. And then when making change to the Revolut code in the ordinance, we realized that the special event process isn't what current process is. So we will be bringing that back to council in the first quarter of 2022. Are there any questions?
Seeing no questions, would council like to move this forward this evening?
Yes.
If so, happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved, Schaefer.
Second, McHenry.
We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, would someone like to make a motion on the agenda bill?
Councilmember Schaefer, I move we approve agenda bill 21-134A, which is DMC 8.12.110 permit fees and charges.
We're actually on, okay, yeah, I think you're right.
Did I get the
I'm
wrong
sorry.
one?
Yep, the title is actually Special Event Application Processing Fee Ordinance, which is okay. You have the agenda bill right, so I'm gonna call it good.
Okay, okay, good.
All right. And then do we have a second?
Second, Councilmember Naplin.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, second by Councilmember Naplin to approve agenda bill 21-134A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-135A, 2022 School Impact Fees for discussion and/or decision. Director Thomas, you're welcome to speak again. Otherwise, if council's ready to move forward, happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules. Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, I'd like to point out a couple things about the the facility plan, which embodies the impact fees. I have read the school district's facility plans back to 2017. And one of the things that I've noticed and I brought up to the school district in their various presentations is that it's very important for them to be coordinating their growth projections with the growth projections that council sees when we are doing reports to King County. And as I recall, and I could bring the whole thing up, I guess, because I've got it on my desktop, is that what we are really seeing is something more like a 6% trajectory in growth. And as they say, this is they're projecting a 5% increase in growth. So that's one concern I have. And the other concern I have is that this plan, when you look at these plans, we are seeing more and more increases in the amount of money that will be needed for the projects, as well as for bonds and levies, potentially to finance the projects. And so I've become more and more uncomfortable with their facility plans, which then of course translate into the impact fees. And so I wanted to share those concerns before the vote. And I really want to encourage the school district to work even more closely with the city. I think things have gotten a little better, but I really want them to take special note of what is happening in the planning section. And of course, the up and coming housing action plan work as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingle. Is council ready to move this forward this evening, or do we need to push it to the next meeting?
I'd like to move it forward.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Would you like to make a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Second, Brednicki.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, second by Councilmember Brednicki to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And would someone like to make a motion on the agenda bill?
This is Councilmember Schaefer. I'd like to move that we approve Agenda Bill 21-135A, the 2022 Riverview School District Impact Fee.
Second, Brednicki.
We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Councilmember Brednicki to approve Agenda Bill 21-135A, 2022 School Impact Fees. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Thank you. Let the record reflect Councilmember Lingle voted no. The motion does pass. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-120A, wastewater treatment plant upgrade contract, hopefully for decision. Director Laniszewski.
Good evening again, Council, Mayor, any citizens remaining. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly fly through this in the committee. I will try to kind of restate the wastewater treatment plant process here if I can find my plan set. You know, the one complaint I have to the people who create these platforms, Teams, Zoom, they all have their buttons in different spots, so it drives me bananas. So with that said, I will flip my screen here. So briefly, the city put out the RFP for solicitation of an engineer to provide us an update to the 4th train treatment plant process expansion. Being in a moratorium and running out of capacity, that was a pretty high priority. We're grateful to move forward on it expeditiously. So we did engage in an interview. We did only have one team apply. They did not know that. I'm not sure if Ms. McHenry remembers that meeting, but she may have inadvertently let a cat out of a bag, but I don't know that it mattered at that point anyway, because we were interviewing the next morning. So Councilmember Schaefer, I could tell you offline, it was pretty funny. Councilmember Schaefer participated in the interview process we held, and we moved forward on a good discussion. I think we ascertained a good understanding of obviously their potential to do the project and their expertise in membrane bioreactors, which are not all that common. Yes, they are more common than they have been in the past, but with that said, they did great. We felt very comfortable, and they have done a handful of relevant projects in the Puget Sound area recently, and I believe that was part of the packet provided. So provided a memo, provided the scope and fee, total project costs, some CIP tables, the consultant selection memo, and then their submitted RFP for everybody's review. We did discuss in the negotiation process on site a meeting going over, the real needs, making sure they understood where we were, they knew what we needed, bringing in the wastewater treatment plant manager, going over everything in detail. I think the bulk of it, right, is 4th train. It is proprietary. It was installed and originally purchased through a design build, not a design bid build, but a design build with a specific element that was proprietary at the time. It was Z-Weed was the terminologies, owned by Xenon, then bought by GE in the mid-2000s, and now it's owned by a company called Suez. So the membranes are proprietary. We will work on the proprietary element of those membranes in the future. But there is the simple part of the 4th trains. We had UV, ultraviolet, sterilization and process treatment we needed to do. It made sense to have parametrics provide that element of design as well. In the end, the biosolids management has been suspect, not working great. We have reluctance to keep going, knowing we will have more biosolids to add to the process, but we come out of moratorium and engage in more wastewater management. So we do want to look at that as well. It is on the CIP. A couple other small ancillary projects listed in and amongst the CIP tables. One thing we didn't insert now, we may add in the near future, it is on a near CIP, was the headworks and the screening. I know operations is very displeased with the quality of the screening we have. It is on the CIP list to be done. Parametrics and I agree it can be totally separate, added any time. Certainly a priority moving forward, but right now handling the treatment trains and the back end of the process is more important based on time, in our opinion, than kind of trying to do so many things. And I think the one part, maybe compartmentally, I can pull up that screenshot of the plant. And oops, man. And just to kind of run real quick, I don't want to overbore people with what we do here, but mixed liquor comes in, it gets screened in the headworks, goes around to the anox zone, sits, gets pumped into the aeration basin, moves into the treatment train membrane process. At that point, it is separated. The biosolids, they sit in the lower clarifiers before they are pushed into the biosolids building. Dewatered, put in the truck, and hauled off. Clean water at that point separated, hits the UV building, and then hits the river. So oversimplified part of the process, but kind of compartmentalizing the 6 stages we really have in operations at the plant. So with that said, the project in whole with parametric support is listed at, oh boy, where did I go here? One second. Sorry, don't get car sick. Oh, well, let's skip that. It was the 800 and almost 50,000 was the total. And there is a management reserve of almost 43, a little over 43,000 in there for things as they come up, which is a little over 5%. I'm not sure what other details folks would be interested in knowing, so I think I'll just open it up for discussion at this point. Timeline-wise, one of the other elements too, and Councilmember Schaefer will hopefully remember, typically you'll do a preliminary, then a 10, 30, 60, 90 bid. We feel comfortable enough with a preliminary and then a 40, 90 bid document, so that cuts out some steps, does save time as well as some costs, because every plan set review is another review element that we all participate in, of course, especially the designers. So we were very comfortable with that, and parametrics being part of that original design, having a lot of documentation, needing to only update a few things before we can move into production plans. So that's kind of the basis of it. I'd love to hear some questions if we have any. Entertain anything you folks would like. Chat.
Thank you, Director Laniszewski. First is Councilmember Lingle and then Councilmember Napland.
Hey, thanks a lot. And I know I always have public works questions, so I should probably apologize. I wanted to first say three things about this agenda bill package, which I'm just really happy about. First of all, I thought the agenda bill package was really clear. I had a few follow-up questions on sole source. I'll save that to the end of my comments. But I thought the way the whole package was put together was really good. In particular, I appreciated the November 4, 2021 memo, which summarized the outreach methods they used. And I'm calling attention there because it shows that, all the discussions that have gone on at the procurement meetings at FAC, sometimes they've been really hard, but I feel like the comments of council in those meetings was really respected, and how that was done on November the 4th. And I also like the fact that since the Suez is a sole source, and it has to be because that's the way the whole rest of the plant is done. I also was pleased that there is a negotiation component that will occur at that 40% design between, which will be led by the city, of course, and its consultants. So I think that there's still more procurement activity which achieves our values around getting the best deal for the folks in Duvall. The one area that I'm not concerned about it has to happen, so it's not an opposition, is that it has to do with the potential use of federal funds on this project. We know there's ARPA money, but there are many, many other federal potential sources because of the infrastructure bill. And I want to make sure we don't inadvertently miss an opportunity or take a misstep as we plan the project, that we miss federal opportunities. And so I'm only bringing this up because I would like to see us continue having discussions at the council level, and perhaps at a COW. If it's at a COW, I would love it if it could be in January, to talk about how council wants to see us work with federal funds, because I just don't want us to miss this once in how many decades opportunities. The question I had on sole source for Steve, which he answered, was that the estimated cost of the membrane from Suez is his estimates around 500,000 or so. if we can get sole source approved in the separate council resolution, which I suspect we will, and we can take steps to make sure that that does not in any way preclude us using federal funds. I'm very concerned that we take advantage of every federal dollar we can, because otherwise we're looking at bonding projects. And we have, by my count, at least 4 major projects that potentially would put us in the need to take on debt. So I'm hoping council will have that federal discussion, all types of federal money at a COW meeting in January.
Yeah, and just a quick point on Councilmember Lengel's discussion today. The estimate by Randy in Parametrics relative to my estimate was derived from, in 2016, we upgraded our membranes. Long story short, it was about 1.2 million for 9 cassettes. We need 3 new cassettes. You do the math on that, you're right about 400,000 in 2016 dollars. Compound that at 5 to 10%, and you're still right around $500,000 to do what we believe we will need. There are other ancillary components, but yeah, that's the bulk of that amount.
So, Councilmember Naplin?
I agree with what Councilmember Lengo was saying about ensuring we retain the ability to use federal funds, even though we don't necessarily know if we can get them now. We don't want to, make a step that eliminates the possibility. I had 2 questions. The first one was also related to the sole source and the membranes being proprietary. Is there anything within this project that's pigeonholing us even further into the proprietary membrane? Is there anything we can do at this point to retain more flexibility into the future?
I would say we're not getting any further pigeonholed, but how Suez operates now, right? There is a third arm coming into our plant daily with communicated connectivity to the process, right? Suez owns that, the intellectual property of how the Z-weed systems are processed also. For example, when we had the big flood and we were really taking in I&I and we were at our, water coming out of our gills, we had it processed maxed with computer controls here. We called them, they actually can push and gave us, about 10% more process enhancement, which is completely proprietary, out of our control. So they will always have an arm in here, and the Z-weed, the membrane part of that process is theirs. So they're here daily with us. But everything else around it is such where, for example, some of the blowers, they pair up different blowers now with their membranes. So we're only going after the amount of blowers we need for the 4th train, knowing the next phase of the CAP, which is about now anyway, replaces those blowers. But we want to see how the new ones will work. They're not as expensive as the whole process. So we want to see how those are going to work, if we like them, or maybe if we don't change out down the road and we go with what we have. So there's a couple things that we're stuck with, but for the most part, it's just the membrane process. Like I said, there's kind of 6 compartments in the system. They're one of the whole thing. So they'll always be here, but we're not getting any further pigeonholed by going that route. And sole source is reasonable. We will have to come back with other resolution. We've already kind of briefed this with Daniel, so we know where we're going with that, and we'll work on that sooner than later. But it doesn't need to be done immediately and adjacent to this. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And my other question is about the biosolids hauling. I remember when we had that contract come up, there was something about where there was grading of the solids, and I don't remember if it was the water content. I think it was something else that had to do with the biosolids, maybe the amount of bacteria. I don't remember. Yeah. Are we getting anywhere to getting the cheap rate?
Oh yeah. So I guess good news, not too far off topic. So there are 2 classes of biosolids. The new contracts specify a rate for each class, kind of the lesser processed class and the A class. So we were not an A class biosolids when we started, but we are now. So we actually improved. You may or may not recall, again, we geek out a lot. Someone on this screen will remember, I came to you guys with a flow process chart, and we did some, basically we were running the two digesters in parallel, meaning they both went and then they went out. So we started running them in series, so they went to one digester to the other, then to the process. If they needed to age, it's called a vector attraction. Basically, is there enough food in that where critters want to come and eat it, which takes longer to degrade once it's on the field. So we are getting the cheaper rate. That doesn't have anything to do with water and biosolids, but we are paying per ton, right? The more water we extract, the cheaper it'll be because the less materials we're actually hauling away. So that is a key component. We expect to be above 18%. So, 6% a year is a lot. We're hopeful for more, and we'll see how it goes once we start to assess who's out there for their mechanized, biosolids dewatering. But we should have an increased savings in the amount we haul off as well as the mass. So it's volume and mass based.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Well,
Are there any other questions for Director Laniszewski? Seeing none, is council evening? And if so, be happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules and move this forward so that Public Works can begin their work. Councilmember Lengyel.
Make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second, McHenry.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lengyel, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And happy to entertain a motion on the agenda bill itself.
I'll make the motion on Agenda Bill AB 21-120A, which is wastewater treatment plant upgrade contract.
Second, McHenry.
Right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passed. Moving on to unfinished business, Agenda Bill 21-98B, 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendments for discussion and/or decision. Mr. Davis.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have a resolution before the council tonight if they're ready to take action to implement the Planning Commission's recommendations on the 2021 comp plan amendments. I can also answer any further questions if there's anything outstanding from the City Council.
If council is ready to take action, we just need a simple motion to move it forward this evening.
So moved. Schaefer.
We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second, Brednicki.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Councilmember Brednicki to approve the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendments. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Napland?
Yeah, I just was curious a little bit more about what the conversation was with the Planning Commission when there's a split vote like that. I don't know if you could help me understand more what their thought process was on those that weren't in favor.
Yes, Councilmember Napton. So yeah, at this particular Planning Commission meeting, it was unique because we only had an even number of council members, or sorry, commissioners that ended up, of course, in a 2-2. But the two dissenting votes from planning commissioners essentially felt that the zoning didn't need to change, and that the property owner would be able to, still be able to comply with, the tree protection ordinance and the zoning ordinance of the property. And didn't feel that any change was necessary in order to promote the protection of additional exceptional trees. So it was just kind of their underlying property rights sort of philosophy.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, just to add my 2 cents worth, I took a personal interest in this and attended a number of the Planning Commission meetings. And by the way, Troy, thank you for leading the excellent discussions on this, because I know the subject was contentious with the with the landowners and even within the commission itself. So we did have a number of good conversations with both landowners. Something that one of the commissioners brought out that I think it's very important for all of us to understand is these landowners are in land speculation, and it's like any other kind of investment. It has an associated risk. One of those risks is impact from city zoning changes. And on top of that, it's not clear really if this would impact the value of their land or not. They were obviously concerned that it would lessen the value, but frankly, there was no evidence brought forth that would support that. So I do strongly support the recommendations from the Planning Commission for a couple of reasons. First of all, as Troy says, it will minimize tree loss. Now understand, even then, even with the R12 rating, which will of all the, even of the R8 rating, the R12 rating is actually better as far as minimizing tree loss. But even at that, well, Troy, help me out here. We'll lose 70–80% of those trees, including exceptional trees on these parcels, even with that R12. Is that correct?
It's hard to give a specific percentage at this time because we would need a specific development proposal. In my staff report, there was a basic analysis, on how much land would need to be consumed in order to meet the minimum densities. But that analysis didn't include infrastructure. So, if you add on infrastructure to what that number was, we'll still see a loss, of exceptional trees. And particularly with the east parcel, part of the issue is that those exceptional trees were just so evenly distributed across the site, that there wasn't any kind of one cluster, that we could just say, hey, we'll just set aside this cluster of exceptional trees and we'll be good. So, but the R12, yes, it does allow us more flexibility in that zoning classification to utilize less land in the effort to preserve more exceptional trees on site.
Good. The second thing I like about this, the rezoning to R12, and Troy again pointed this out during our discussions, but it supports the progressive zoning density from east to west, going from R4 to R8 to R12, and then finally to R20 on the far west side. And this gives a more even distribution. I think it helps our city blend in with the more rural areas on the east better, and again blend in with the with the more densely, or what will be a more densely populated area by the highway. So I like it for that reason as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Is there any other discussion before the council takes a vote this evening? Seeing none, all those in favor of Agenda Bill 21-98B, the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendments, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-98B2, ordinance for the 2021 zoning map amendment. Mr. Davis?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Troy Davis for the record. So we have before you tonight the updated zoning map ordinance. This implements the updated comprehensive plan amendment that the City Council just voted on. So this agenda bill reflects those changes and updates our zoning map accordingly. Any questions I can answer if there are any.
Troy, if you could put
that. Any questions?
Sorry, something a question. Troy, could you put your your zoning map up again. I think it's just good for us to see how this
Yeah.
does kind of blend, progressively blend the different zones together. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Would a council member like to make a motion for approval?
So move, Schaefer.
Do we have a second?
Second, McHenry.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry to approve Agenda Bill 21-98B sub 2, the ordinance for the 2021 zoning map amendments. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to our last item of business, Agenda Bill 21-91B, contract amendment for Summit Law for discussion and decision. Mr. City Administrator Offal.
So a lot of this happened before me, so before I arrived, so I'm just going to give a summary. What I know, the city entered into a contract with Summit Law to assist with labor negotiations not to exceed $15,000. Those negotiations took longer than anticipated, totaled $30,175. Since the contract was initiated, city has also utilized Summit Law's services for a variety of other sort of labor matters, including police reform legislation and its effect on our contract, and vaccine mandate and its effect on our contractual obligations with the unions. The usage of Summit Law for employment labor-related issues is reviewed by the city's primary law firm, OMW, who is here. Daniel Kidd is here. The result of the discussion is both staff and OMW believe the work has been assigned to Summit is well suited for Summit, explains the increase in costs over initial expectations. In light of this, staff would like to continue using the Summit Law for the majority of its employee-related legal services and is asking for a contract amendment to extend the agreement date to December 31st, 2022, and for services to be provided on an as-needed basis, not to exceed cap, as is common with many legal service agreements. And one of the notes is that with OpenGov, the going over of our contract will be, should be able to be seen much quicker, and we'll see that our burn rate is going much faster, and that's something that our finance director, has been very happy about. That'll help us with our burn rate and where we're at. So it's up for discussion.
Right. So we do need to get something approved. So with that, if there are amendments, please propose them and for discussion. But before amendments, we would need a motion for the underlying contract. But it does look like we have a hand up for potential discussion. Councilmember Lenkel.
Yeah, I just want to give some background. I'll read this off very quickly. Council, after discussion of this contract, questions were raised. That was on September the 7th. At that time, I volunteered to work with administration and legal counsel to come up with some ideas around language. I provided some discussion points to administration as well as council. That was done in October. And at that point, I never heard anything back from either administration or council. And I specifically asked for two things in my email. The first thing I specifically asked for was that my commentary on the contract be provided in the city council package. That, as we know, has not been done this evening. The second thing that I asked for was, I very specifically was expecting discussion, and I never had that discussion. That was in the last sentence of my transmittal, my email. So I feel like I have to give that background, and I give that background with regret that this is how it's happened. And I do have two options for contract amendment, which I will offer, and I've already provided that to the city clerk to bring up on the screen.
So before we have an amendment, we do on the agenda bill as well. So if we have an amendment that needs to be made, then we should have a motion and a second on the floor before council begins proposing amendments.
Yes, I understand.
I move we approve Agenda Bill 21-91B, authorizing the mayor to sign a contract amendment number 1 with Summit Law.
Second, Brednicki.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McHenry, a second by Councilmember Brednicki to approve Agenda Bill 21-91B. Now, appropriate time for amendments to be proposed.
Please, city clerk, can you bring up the two options for language that I provided to you?
Yes. Yes, I can. Hold on one moment. Can you see it? Everyone?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
Can everyone
okay.
else see it?
Good. There it is.
Are we ready? In my email back in October, the problem that I identified in the council meeting and others acknowledged was the language of and other employment matters. In the agenda bill, administration has acknowledged that they did choose to use Summit for other employment matters. Now, the first thing to note is that the title of the contract is labor negotiations. It's not and other employment matters. That's not the title that is on in the package. And so the issue I have here is that Summit has been hired because they are a specialty firm dealing in labor. And that's how we've always used them in the past up until the recent change in use. And the issue for us is that one of the things we decided when we hired Ogden Murphy Wallace was that they were a firm that might be able to do things like general employment matters that were not labor, organized labor issues. So the reason for my first alternative is to delete and employment, which would change the focus of that first sentence in Summit's scope of work, which is actually in a Summit letter dated July 30, 2020. The alternative that we could consider is that other employment services are permitted if requested by administration or council, but those should be coordinated with our appointed city attorney law firm, which shall advise whether the work should proceed through Summit or is such a general nature that the work can be completed by the city attorney. Now, the background of why this has been a concern for myself, and I suspect some other council members, is we've had problems with having two law firms in the past. And those problems have resulted in a lot of contentious discussion and other things that frankly cost the city more money to resolve. So I really like to see that not happen. We shouldn't have any confusion about who's going to work on what. And I don't see this as some big double, this is not a double review of legal work. What it is notifying our law firm that we have this piece of work, we plan to send it to Summit. They can either, say we think we can do it or not. That's simple. It is not some big, elaborate two firms working on something. In fact, that's what we want to avoid. So the first one, the first option simply says Summit is only going to work on labor matters. And the vagueness of other employment type matters is removed from the contract. The second option gives more flexibility. It allows other employment law services, but there is a required communication and coordination with the law firm that is our represented city attorney. We have actually had situations where we had two law firms identified as our city attorney at the same council meeting. It was really confusing. The other advantage, I think, of having some coordination is really risk management. The city attorney is responsible for all of our city affairs. And so having some flexibility and communication that is required, I think can resolve it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm looking at my original memo. It's my understanding from Ogden Murphy Wallace, our counsel, Mr. Kenny, that this is what they do generally. The problem is that we are looking at contracts that go on over an extended period of time. And so it's better, in my view, to have things very clear as we move forward. We now have an amendment that's going to take us into 2022 with Summit. They've done a great job. This is not in any way a reflection on Summit, no dissatisfaction, but I do feel that the contract has got a little bit of mission creep, if you will. And when it comes to employment law, I've never heard back from Mr. Kenny on this issue, but in our handbook anyway, it says that labor negotiations under state law is really it is a duty. It's something that council has sole authority over. In fact, the language in our book says that we exercise the power in regard to all aspects of collective bargaining as provided for and subject to the provisions. And I looked at the provisions. I didn't see anything that changed what would undermine that or compromise that sentence. In any case, I'm relying on what's in our own handbook. So that is the amendment or two options up for discussion.
Somehow.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I had the same concern when this came forward the last time, that suddenly it seemed like it was going to be used for additional employment matters, and had kind of expressed some concerns at that point. And now that I'm seeing it again, it actually seems to have moved even further, that the intention is to use it for the majority. They'll be our primary attorney for any employment matter. And it does feel like it's moved from labor negotiations to then employment matters that have a labor component to now all employment matters generally. And I don't know that that was ever the intention. When you hire a city attorney, it's employment matters are a large part of what happens in a city. And to have all of that parsed away to another attorney rather than your primary city attorney just wasn't what I had envisioned, or what I think when we advertised for a city attorney, what we were looking for. I think if you even look at the scope of work, you would see that employment matters are definitely a primary function of our city attorney. So I do feel like this is a major change that is being requested here, and the intention of definitely diverting all employment matters basically to another firm. I'm not really in favor of that change. I don't see a real strong argument towards splitting off the work. I definitely agree having a specialist during negotiations is critical. So I'm interested in what Councilmember Langle is trying to accomplish here, and I'm curious how other council members feel.
If I may, I would like to make a point of clarification. And the point of clarification is that, in fact, the city of Duvall has used Summit law for employment-related matters that are exclusive, not inclusive of collective bargaining for several years. Previously, it was at the advice of the previous city attorney that we had, or, and in fact, our insurance company, when we have labor-related issues that involve pre-defense, for example, if you have a disciplinary issue with a director, et cetera, including many issues that this council has had to address, that Summit law is who our insurance company recommends, and it is very, very, very common for jurisdictions to contract with employment law firms to handle those specialized issues. The difference here is that previously, when the city used the Summit law for those issues, we did it on a case-by-case basis without a contract. So when we brought forth this amendment, it was with the recognition that Summit is doing the challenging employment-related work while Ogden Murphy Wallace is doing the day-to-day HR work. Point of clarification is that when the city uses other law firms for any services, our primary law firm is in the loop. We use multiple different law firms for multiple different issues. And so this is not an uncommon issue, nor is it an attempt to divert routine employment-related services away from Ogden Murphy Wallace. I do have concerns about not being able to use the firm that our insurance company recommends when we get into those issues. But I just wanted to clarify that that has been, in fact, standard practice. It is nothing new. It's simply putting it into a contract. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly take a moment to, frankly, concur with everything you just said. When I was interviewed and selected for the position of city attorney, my firm did not have capacity at that time to provide labor related support to the city. And so I made that known at that time and recommended working with Summit. I work with Summit on all of my clients for labor related matters where we can't provide those services. And as I think everybody acknowledges, they're a wonderful law firm to work with, and that's not the issue. We do have employment attorneys at our firm, and we do provide general employment advice to our clients, Duvall included, on a regular basis. And just as the mayor just explained, the scope of our kind of routine employment advice to the city does generally end where there is some sort of labor component. And when you have so many of your employees represented, that happens often. And so it would be routine and normal for either a matter to transition to the labor attorney because this got to be bargained or whatever the matter may include, or there might be a component that would then come back to my desk for an ordinance or code review or whatever that might be. And so throughout the course of the last year and a half that I've worked with you all, that's happened multiple times. And I personally have not seen any overlap or attempt to have overlap by the mayor or administration in doing that. A great example is the vaccine mandate. There were touches by our office, there were touches by Mr. Swedlow, and then there were touches by my office again after that, when it made sense. And as the mayor said, I felt like I was kept in the loop, and it was a collaborative process. I work with Dan Swedlow specifically on one of my other clients, and he is very quick to identify when it's not something that's in his wheelhouse as our labor attorney. And I'm also very quick to say when it's a labor thing, mainly because of your needs. We want to make sure that you're getting the best advice and you're supported the best that you can. I'm not a labor attorney, so I will be quick to say that. And he also doesn't do the day-to-day general city municipal attorney type work. So I do think there's a collaborative process there. And I guess I would just note that the proposed contract amendment to extend it does not change the scope of work. There is the proposed amendment that Councilmember Langle has here for you to consider, but it in of itself, as it's currently on the table, doesn't change what has already been in place for the last year and a half. And that has, at least in my view, worked perfectly fine. So I just wanted to put a little bit of commentary on that, given where the discussion was.
Mayor, may I respond?
So hold on just a minute. We haven't heard from council members Brudnicki or Schaefer on this at this point, or council member Hook. So we have an amendment on the floor. We should speak to that.
Councilmember Hogue or Councilmember Brudnicki, please go ahead.
Councilmember Brudnicki?
I'm fine with going through with the bill as is, as per the recommendation that you just stated and clarifying for us. So I'm
I was cleaning my glasses and I went, oh, yeah, everything's okay.
Councilmember Hogue, and then Councilmember McHenry, and then Councilmember Schaefer.
I guess when hearing from our attorney and the mayor, it seems like we're kind of on the same page in that we, I feel like the way the agenda bill is written is probably not really true to how it's being used currently, is my thought. Because when I read through it, I think you're going to be using them for everything, and we won't be running anything through Ogden Murphy Wallace. So I just kind of, I feel like the verbiage that Councilmember Lingle came up with is kind of a good starting point, but I just want to make sure that there's not duplication and that there's, that we run it by our current attorney first, is my thought. I also have another amendment too, but I won't bring it up while we're talking about this one.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hogue, just a point of clarification, the agenda bill, the contract is separate from the agenda bill. So the contract language is what underpins everything. The agenda bill is an explanatory statement. So if it was confusing to folks, that's our apologies, but that is not what the actual contract is. What the contract language is what's followed. Councilmember McHenry.
Thank you. I just basically had a clarification question for you, Mayor, or maybe for Kevin too. I'm not sure who would take this on. So the way Councilmember Langle's second option that she wrote out, I guess, could you explain briefly how things happen now, just in general? I mean, if an employment matter comes up, I mean, there might be some really obvious ones that would go to Summit first, but I mean, I'm guessing, I would assume that in general, you would check in with Ogden Murphy Wallace just to make sure what the process is there. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is if that's already happening, I don't know, if we should even consider adding this, just in my personal view.
Absolutely. Great question, Mayor Pro Tem McHenry. And that's exactly how it works. So say, for example, we have a management exempt employee and you have some discipline issues. And the discipline issues need some, to manage those discipline issues and correct them, you need some legal advice. The first person you go to is your city attorney. If it's something that's simple, and it's simple, for example, a progressive discipline issue where the city attorney will help you identify that progressive discipline plan, put some language in place, and it's really cut and dry, then that's where you would stop. You would stop with Ogden Murphy Wallace and move on from there. Historically, where you need it outside of labor negotiations is when you have a management exempt employee, for example, if you are leading up to termination, or you have a situation where you might have an employment investigation like we've had in the past. That's where you start and first and foremost loop in the city attorney. When you have, for example, an investigation or something that might be leading to termination, there is contact with the insurance company because the insurance company helps oversee some of those issues. Typically at that point, you know, after you've coordinated with the city attorney and the insurance company, if it's one of those issues that rises to the level of the insurance company will make a recommendation to which firm you use. WCIA has consistently referred us to Summit Law. So there's also that challenge is if we aren't allowed to use them for that management exempt type issue, even at Ogden Murphy Wallace's or WCIA's recommendation, then it creates a challenge for who we actually go and find. And Summit is the standard bearer for pretty much all challenging employment related law in Washington state, at least on this side of the state. You know, for those council members that were here when we went through separation with a few of our directors, when we would go into executive session and discuss those matters, Summit was there because of the recommendations of either our city attorney or our insurance company. And, you know, as Daniel pointed out, there's constant, you know, there's the routine stuff. So for example, right now, Ogden Murphy, and that will continue when we have employment contracts with our exempt folks in particular, that's Ogden Murphy Wallace. When we have an MOU or a contract that needs to go through the labor union, as we do right now with some other issues, that goes through Summit primarily in coordination with Ogden Murphy Wallace. So the city attorney, our primary city attorney, is at the table and in the loop with everything employment related we do, whether or not they end up the primary on it.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. So if that's something that we already do, is there something in the second proposal, that short paragraph Councilmember Langle wrote, that doesn't correlate or doesn't match what's done now? Because I guess what I'm saying is if it outlines what we already do, is there harm in just including it, or what's the con to including it, is what I'm trying to understand.
Mr. Kenny?
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted when I started to talk. Yeah, so just a quick comment on that. And so the longer sentence that's on the screen, kind of option 2, as I understand it, to me, that is an internal city process related request for how this would work. I view the engagement between the city and Summit Law as outside of that. This is, in my view, inserting that process related thing that relates to OMW as well into a Summit Law contract that Summit Law doesn't have any control or involvement with. How a contract gets administered is an internal, process and procedure of the city, and really isn't appropriate, in my view, in one of 2 contracts that are related to that. And really, administration of contracts falls to administration anyway. And so by inserting that particular second option into Summit's contract, controlling how the city works with me and works with them, it's not how I view that as being functional or how that's supposed to work. So I just want to point that out, because I think I have no idea what Mr. Swedlow will say when he sees if that were inserted in there. I think he would, well, I won't speculate on what he would say. If it was me, I would wonder why that's falling in my contract when it deals with 2 law firms and internal administration.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, so from everything I've heard, I guess I don't even understand what problem we're trying to fix here by the language change. And Councilmember Lingle, maybe you can elaborate that on a little bit, but to me, it sounds like things are already working in a common sense way. And I don't understand what this additional language would bring.
Well, I can tell you why this became a concern if we want to go back and revisit history. But let me just say, again, this is not about whether or not we should hire Summit Law. And if it's an administrative item, then I would have appreciated somebody getting back to me last October. So that could have been, discussed. But there is history that we have had in the last 4 years where we have had problems around coordination of legal services, including situations where counsel had no idea that we had another law firm under contract. It was not a good time in our history, and it had several repercussions. So my goal here was, if this is what we're doing, in fact, that statement is actually in my email to them. If that's what we're doing, is there any harm in doing this? And since nobody ever got back to me, I've proceeded on this evening. But we have not had consistency in coordination between law firms. That has not been the history of my being on council. It's been a problem. So maybe we need to do something else if it's not in this contract, but it has been a problem. And I don't want to see us end up in disagreements over opinions. The other thing that it has been a concern of mine for a long time, and we, again, had this problem in the past, was, we had 2 different opinions and from 2 different attorneys. And then we ended up with a 3rd attorney talking to us about the same issue. It was very expensive. I don't want us to do that again. And if there is some other procedural way we can make sure that is not going to happen again, then, it would have been great if somebody had told me that. But the discussion at council in September raised this concern. And the things that are being said now weren't put up then. Again, this is not about hiring Summit Law. It's about trying to make the contract more clear. That's why I'm putting this out there.
Councilmember Napland, and then I will ask if there's support for the amendment. And if council would be so kind, I would also like to address the competing attorneys issue for Councilmember Schaefer's benefit to provide a little bit more background on that. So Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, I think part of it is the agenda bill, and I think it was Councilmember Hogue mentioned it. When I read the agenda bill, it says staff would like to continue using Summit Law for the majority of its employee-related legal services. So what that was communicating to me is that we are using Summit Law for all, basically the majority of employment-related legal services. And so what I'm hearing now is maybe that wasn't really an accurate representation of what's happening now or what's intended to be happening. It's more general employment, employee-related legal services are handled by Ogden Murphy. If they escalate or have discipline components, perhaps, or labor components, they would get moved over to Summit. Is that a better representation of what's happening? Because I really do think the agenda bill sent me down a line of thinking, wow, we just use Summit Law now for everything employment related. And it is nice to know that there's one attorney that I could go to and ask a question of who would, know what was going on, the broad subjects that we have. And so if so much of it is being parsed off, that had a concern. That was confusing to me. So maybe someone could clarify if that agenda bill is not accurately describing what's happening. Maybe we need to set the record straight of what exactly the intention is. And I feel like it's been verbalized, and I think Councilmember Langle just wants it sort of documented. And if the place where it is documented doesn't belong in the contract with Summit Law, I could understand that. But I do think it would be nice to have it documented what the intention is because of previous confusion.
City Administrator Apple.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things was that the agenda bill, I'll throw it out. We had 2 agenda bills because one got deleted and then it got and we had to pull things out. That was the intention of the agenda bill, was to talk about it as being all the things that are employment related, which also have a labor component. But we were scrambling because one of them just got lost. We had to really find it again and then merge the 2. I was the one who wrote it, and they had no intention. This is what we're talking about, and what our solicitor Daniel Kenny talked about is the normal practice. That's the practice we've been doing, and that's pretty much standard. That's standard for these types of things, where you want to have that your primary attorney does the majority of the work, and when it's something that has a component that's labor, it then goes to the labor lawyer, because there's you don't want to make. You don't want to make judgments and go down a line of thought and find out how it has contractual implications later on. So you want to make sure that those things are. I'll say that, I apologize if it was unclear. We did have, that was one of the last agenda bills, and we were scrambling on Friday to find out where the heck the one that got deleted went, because the other one had nothing. It was really just the financial portion in it, and we're like, what the heck? Where's the verbiage? So I'll take the hit in the fact that we were just trying to get it out. We found the one, we combined the 2 agenda bills to make sure that we had all the information in it. And so probably the phrase should have been something more like, like continue some law for the majority of its employer related legal services with, which have a labor component, so that's, if that helps to explain.
And we are past 9:30, so I am going to need to take a motion to extend the meeting before we continue this discussion.
I move we extend our meeting past 9:30. McHenry.
Second, Schaefer.
Great, thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember McHenry and a second by Councilmember Schaefer to extend the meeting past 9:30. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we've had lots of discussion on the proposed amendment. We do not have a second. If there's not a second, the motion will die for lack of a second. And I know Councilmember Hoag had a proposed amendment.
Are you ready for me? So my amendment is with paragraph 13, and it's the termination clause. It says that the city reserves the right to terminate this agreement at any time by giving 10 days written notice to the consultant. I'd like to add a sentence add after that, after a vote of the majority of the whole city council. And the reason I'm asking for this is that because our attorney position is not an appointed position, the authority to sign the contract lies with the city council. So I feel that the city council needs to vote if a termination is going to be given to the attorney. The council needs to vote on it. So that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoag. I don't have any objection to that, but I would like Mr. Kenny just to address that legality question and make sure we have some clarity on the record.
So, I mean, honestly, I've never seen a contract with something like that. Typically, a contract approval authority rests with council. Then the administration, consistent with the terms of the contract, lies with administration. The contract can either be used or not used outside of that anyway. If the mayor doesn't have an objection to it, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it. It just creates a process to go through termination. So I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just unusual in my view, but I think it can be done.
So Councilmember Hoag has made a motion for an amendment.
Second, Councilmember Naplan.
All right, any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Was that Councilmember Brodnicki with the no?
Councilmember Brodnicki with a no.
Thank you. All right, the amendment passes. And with that, any further discussion on the underlying amended agenda bill? Councilmember Schaefer?
Look, I'd like to understand the urgency of this. Is there a reason we need to get it passed tonight? City Administrator Oppel, what do you think?
Well, we need to pass the amendment because we're over the allotted amount. And that's
Okay.
one of, that's, and so the question arises, if we're going to continue to use Summit in this way, and we're going to continue to use OMW, I'd ask the question back, and we're over the amount, and we're saying that Dana is going to keep that from happening in the future because we've got better software to help us with that and help with our burn rate. And hopefully we won't have another vaccine policy that's going to cause huge amounts of legal bills for us to have to implement. Really, we do need to kind of get through we're over the amount that was allocated. I mean, there's consent from you all. You all are not, in opposition to it. But my question would be, why wouldn't we just continue on with the amendment so that we're in the clear, we're in the right direction?
And Director Mason, you had your hand up.
Oh, I also wanted to say the contract expires at the end of the year, so we'd like to keep it going.
I forgot that. And honestly, I'll tell you one thing from outside of ours, other firms, from what I've heard, like Madrona is another one who does, they are turning away customers. So if we had to do a contract with Summit, they may look at us and say, it's either going to be more money or we just don't have capacity because we would like to take on other work. I'm not saying they're going to say that, but there's a risk of that when Madrona, which is another major law firm, is turning away work right now. The vaccine, the vaccine mandates have caused a lot of work to be thrown towards these labor attorneys right now, and so there's only so many around who are specialized in this. So that's another reason for us to do it. I forgot. Thank you for bringing that up, Director Mason.
Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a way to move forward while addressing, the concerns that Councilmember Langle brought up and that I think several other feel similarly about. Is it possible if we could get some kind of a memo from administration that would outline the intention of how our attorneys coordinate employment matters, that primarily they, start with Ogden Murphy. If they rise to, a significant discipline or labor type issues, then it will go to Summit. I think the confusion in the way the agenda bill was written and kind of some past history has necessitated, something, more formal. I mean, obviously it's not a legal document. Maybe, Mr. Kenny will, have some advice about, writing a memo, but just to document the process so council would understand the intent.
I don't know.
I don't think that's an issue. Go ahead, Mr. Kenny.
Oh, no, I was only going to say I wasn't sure if that was directed to me to respond to or to you, to the mayor, but I can certainly work with the mayor to do something like that. A memo. We don't want to have any attorney-client privilege information in that, but how the mayor will use services. I mean, she can certainly share that with the group. Like you said, it's not going to be a legally binding thing, but I haven't seen anything inconsistent with what's been described, and I'm sure that a memo from the mayor would just further document what she's already put forward.
Yeah, that's not an issue. Councilmember Langle, and then I think I will call for a vote. I think there's consensus. Want to move forward with it as amended. and we are getting late. Councilmember Lingle?
Yeah, I think a memorandum that confirms what process is in use and will continue to be used would be a great help in my view. I do have one question. I think I had put this in my original memo, but perhaps the memo could address it, which is one of my concerns based on, some of the things that we've experienced is that what happens if there's two different opinions? And, I understand that in administrative matters, administration is going to, make some decisions, but council wouldn't necessarily ever know what that other opinion is. And so what's going to happen in those situations when we have two attorneys working on matters that may not be the same one, but there's a coordination issue, or it could literally be, an opinion is asked for and a second opinion is asked for. And that's okay. That either council or the mayor could do that. But how do we make sure that both pieces of information come to council?
Mr. Kenny? And I think part of that is that typical, I think an added question is that typical of are two opinions from different attorneys typical, and is it typical to advise council of those administrative matters?
Well, I would say that it hasn't happened since I've been here. There hasn't been a time when I have tried to have an opinion to check Mr. Swedlow's opinion or anything like that. Furthermore, it wouldn't ethically. I don't do labor work. We're not offering labor work to the city. And so again, when Mr. Swedlow is involved, it's because there's a labor component. We are not providing those services to the city. And we made that very clear at the beginning when I was brought on. And so I can't envision a scenario where, you would get two different opinions from Mr. Swedlow and from myself or Karen Sutherland or somebody like that, because we are advising on different, even if it's one topic, there are going to be different components to that we would be working with the city on. And so, and again, the mayor as the administrator of the city is going to be working with the attorneys to move that issue forward, however that would be. And she's going to use her resources in the way that makes sense in those particular circumstances. And again, we're not going to provide an opinion on labor matters, so there won't be that layering.
Great, thank you. If there isn't any further amendments, et cetera, I would like to ask council for a vote. Since we do have a motion and a second on the amended agenda bill on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
all those opposed,
it's the amendment. Are we voting on the amendment?
The amendment was already voted on.
Okay,
so we are at the amendment.
So we're voting on the entire bill now.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion. Just want to keep track.
All right. So we've had the ayes. All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Great. Let the record reflect Councilmember Lingle voted no. And with that, we don't have any further business and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.